All right. So if you just listened to episode 45 called Hobby Casino, which was recorded just a couple of days ago, you might wonder why exactly is this episode number 46 called The Hobby is Not a Casino? All right, so I had a day or two to gather my thoughts after recording episode 45, and I did receive some positive feedback, no negative feedback, which I was kind of surprised about, which is nice though, but it also means maybe I blocked too many people. But the reason I wanted to make this episode is that last episode about Hobby Casino, the entire premise has one giant assumption, and it's huge. It's the make or break assumption. And it is that cards have no emotional value, no sentimental value, no nostalgia. And we know that this is just not the case. Perhaps the flippers, it is. I have definitely talked to some dealers where they have no PC, they have no emotional attachment to cards. They usually and primarily deal in ultra modern football, specifically quarterbacks. Of course, you don't just have to be a dealer either, right? I mean, you can be a member of the public, you can be a buyer, Instagrammer, set up your eBay store, just set up an account, buy, sell, trade, just, but you're transacting cards that, I mean, you're dabbling in cards that transact very easily, very regularly on a weekly basis, sometimes even on a daily basis. There's no rarity. Sometimes they're rare, right? Maybe sometimes they're numbered, but that's the artificial scarcity baked in either with that serial numbering or with that holder, the grading, the slab. That's what creates this. Oh, this is a pop, whatever it is, right? But in general, and I'm not just talking about base cards or just kind of like paper cards, but they're the cards that are of, the top 5 quarterbacks at any given time, the top 10 NBA players at any given time, and they just continuously transact. And so I try to get to know a lot of people. That's kind of like the premise of Hobby S. Thompson and just my podcast is try to get to know the motivation and why people do things the way they do. And I do find myself having, kind of like a really wide net or network of people I talk to because I don't want to just talk to just flippers, just collectors, just investors. Like I really want to get to know a bunch of people, and I want to really get to the, maybe they'll be honest and share why they do things the way they do, or maybe they won't. And uh, as we all know, sometimes we even lie to ourselves, right? We think we're doing something for a certain reason, but we're actually not. So, but here's the thing, to flippers, there is no emotional value, but of course, to the collector, there is. There's a strong emotional value. There's a strong sentimental value to something. And to the collector, and I'm not speaking for all, of course, but it's just my opinion that the hobby is or can be a marketplace for two things. This, I'll do the fingers. Can't even see my finger. One, nostalgia. Two, idol worship. It can also be called an escape. Dare I even say maybe safe haven? Maybe that's going a little bit too far. But also, there's maybe the thought that do we even need to put a label on the hobby or analogize it to something in the zeitgeist? Or is the hobby just the hobby? So, to this group of people, collectors, again, very broad term, if these cards are not transactions and stocks and bonds, are they heirlooms, artifacts, keepsakes? If they are, I know that a lot of these folks, and I'm included, us folks, I don't know, but I know that a lot of us, we say that we're collecting it, we enjoy it. Eventually, we want to pass these down to our kids. But then the question becomes, do our kids even want them? you know, um, a lot of us who, if you're lucky enough to, still have your parents, but we all, if you have parents who are aging, The things we know this very well, the things that give them joy, they don't give us joy. So, just using a very general example, and I'm not talking about anyone in my family, but the grandmother who collects Christmas tchotchkes, ceramics, glass, and this lady loves her collection, right? I mean, just intensely. She puts it behind a glass display case on top of a wooden cabinet, sprays pledge on it, dusts it on a regular basis with a feather duster, and she passes. And then her children or child, they have to figure out what to do with this, right? Would they even know where to start? Would they even keep it? So when a card is purchased by a true, you know, not even great labels, true or pure collector for their PC, it's said that it goes into its forever home. But I'm also reminded of that Outcast song. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Well, but not that part, not the part where it goes like, "I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Ooh, I am for real." Okay, you did not come here to listen to me sing, but it's that part with the owl where it's like forever, ever, ever, ever. And when I say owl, it's in the music video. I found it recently when I was searching for some content. But you'd like to think that it's in its forever home, but we also know that circumstances can happen, and that collector might have to sell that card. But otherwise, uh, to for the lack of a better term, that collector has collected, right? That's what they did. That's what they came to do, and they did it. They collected, and as we all know, it's never enough. Once you get that, you're off to collect some more. So the question becomes why? Um, what are we collecting? There's that saying. I don't know how prevalent it is that we're collecting ourselves. Um, But if you're an older collector who came back into the hobby or maybe never left at all, that player collecting, right? I mean, maybe likely they don't even play anymore, but they represented something to you when you were younger. You idolized them during their playing days when you were younger, and when you were recreating their moves and just pantomiming them against nobody, just playing against essentially your own shadow. And I guess that's a very like he got game, Jesus Shuttleworth. I don't know, although he had his dad there, just riding him and pushing him. But just kind of like, oh no, it was Denzel's character who was doing it to himself. That's what I mean. Yeah, just going against himself in the dark and just some random outdoor court with some lights on. Then you have the younger collectors. Let's say they are true collectors, not these, I like to call them the boss babies, which no one's giving me a lot of grief about, which again, that's totally fine. But there are these boss babies carrying around their Zion cases bigger than their heads, and these aren't, so I'm not talking about them. I'm also not talking about the kids who are doing the trade up challenge and trying to get one over another kid, buy something from one dealer and tries to flip it to another dealer, which again, you don't even have to be a kid. You can be an adult doing that. But, just let's call it the young, true or pure collector, collecting a current playing day player, right? I wonder, will they still keep their cards close to their heart and cherish them, or will they grow up and toss them like Andy in Toy Story 3, like Andy did with Woody and Buzz Lightyear, right? There he is going off to college, and there's that classic meme that I keep thinking about a lot, not just recently, but in the past too. But it's that he's looking down as those two toys are falling down to the ground, and it says like, "I don't want to play with you anymore." And it's like, oh man. And of course, the internet has to ruin it. Um, what time am I at here right now? 10 minutes. Let me take a break. I need to gather my thoughts again. All right. So this idea that the hobby is not a casino if cards have more than just monetary value. I wanted to take this idea of breaking wax being a gamble and being like slots for a moment, okay? Because just trying to apply this collector's lens. I think a lot of people like to think of it as you're breaking wax. It's a gamble. I don't even like the term or acronym ROI, because what are you really getting? Trying to get a return on? It's that the investment, return on investment on wax. Like to me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense unless it's sealed wax, I guess. But let's say you're, a collector and you're getting into breaks to hit the chase card, the case hit, or the big whatever, the big Kuna, only to then want to immediately sell the card or maybe create and flip the card. You're putting money into the machine. You're seeing the numbers go up. You keep putting the machine money into the machine, right? You're just feeding the slot machine over and over and over again. If that's the case, I totally get it. Breaking wax, being like slots, that analogy totally makes sense to me. But let's say you're a player or team collector. You get into a break. You just buy the teams you want or the team you want and you hit cards for your PC. I find it hard to analogize this to playing slots because you're not planning to cash out. You're not planning to sell. You might grade the card, you might not. But the important thing is that card is never hitting the secondary market. And if that's the case, how is that gambling? And how is the hobby a casino? So that's the premise of, I guess, this episode, which is, contrasts with the episode before this. But the thing also, and maybe I'm going to go on a tangent here, and I don't even know how long I'm going to go on this episode, but because I think I said most of what I wanted to say, but I have some other talking points here. The thing about collectors, and this is very much a stereotype I admit, because anytime you just label a group of people, right, it's not going to apply to everyone. But the collectors, in my opinion, they're I do think that they outnumber the flippers and the investors. They're the silent majority. They're usually the quieter ones, or maybe the quiet ones. And we all know the saying, you got to watch out for the quiet ones because they're always watching, right? They're always consuming, and they're probably consuming this content. Maybe I'll stop saying there. You are a collector. You're consuming this content, and I know that I won't even hear a single peep from you, despite you listening to this podcast, watching my content on Instagram, you know, uh, reading my posts and my captions. Which, by the way, all of that you do, thank you so much for doing it. You might even throw me a like or two on occasion, maybe sometimes on accident because you're trying to scroll down your feed. But the thing that remains is that you likely are a quiet collector. You're not a content creator, you're just a content consumer. So you came into the hobby quietly. Maybe you made a social media account. I mean, likely if you're listening to this podcast, you have made a social media account. And as we all know, there are so many collectors who don't have any social media presence, and there are some monster collections that are just hiding. It's almost like the tip of the iceberg and like the Titanic. We don't see this massive amount of cards that are just sitting in people's basements. Shout out to Kimmy NG143 who started revealing just this monster collection that just made everyone's jaw drop, especially if you collect pre Panini basketball. But let's say you are a quiet collector. You don't show your face. You just take pictures of your cards, and you're content. You're not making outwards facing content, but again, you're content, which is funny. Content. Okay, so here's the thing. A year ago, that was me too. I just took pictures of my cards literally on the floor on a table. Didn't have a good light setup. Didn't have much of anything. It's almost like when you play this role playing game, an RPG, right? You have just like the wooden sword and the wooden shield, and then you start battling monsters and you get some XP, you get some gold, and you start leveling up. For me, leveling up, guess you could say that about collections, but also just knowledge, experience. And, in the beginning, just like a lot of you, it's you're almost taking pictures of your cards, almost like a digital catalog, so you can carry it around in your phone and just look at them once in a while. But then my I don't even know when it was. I mean, I know there are some flashpoints where I've mentioned some people coming into my life and encouraging me to do some more and all that, but my content started to evolve, started to change. Some people might argue it was for the worse, but whatever, to each their own. But here's the thing, like, just because I like to create content and outwards facing content where I show my face doesn't I don't think it removes the collector's label. I again, just kind of going on a tangent here, but I think we can be many things at the same time, right? Wear our many hats and all that. That's why I love that one picture of me just wearing a ton of hats because I just I was super happy. But that was me. So I think we're multifaceted just by the sheer fact of being human and being complex and complicated. I think we can be many things at once. And I guess in that regard, I would, admit that at this point in my collecting journey, if I have a podcast, a platform, just ways to express myself that yeah, I want to share myself. Um, Hopefully it resonates with people and I don't know. Sometimes I wonder why I even do this, but I would admit this. I am a loud collector. I do not like to hold opinions to myself. I do not think, that I think my opinion is valid just as much as another person's. Doesn't matter how expensive or nice my collection is. I think some people certainly want to know the bona fides and, what have you done to, to cut your teeth and why should we listen to you or trust you? You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to trust me. I don't know. I just know that the people who do like me, and um, that's enough for me, I guess. But I here's the reason I bring up the loud and quiet collectors. I really do believe that we need loud collectors to grow the hobby because people just taking pictures of their cards on the floor, on the table, in a light box, which by the way, I don't even have a light box still. I don't even have a custom mat. I don't have stickers. I go to these trade nights and people are like, "Oh, let me get your, a sticker for a sticker." And I'm like, "I don't have any of that stuff. I may in the future, but there's something that I still don't have." But when it comes to people just taking pictures of their cards and we call them the pure collector, the true collector. They're really just kind of showing off, and I don't mean that in a bad way or a mean way, but they're showing off or displaying their collection because they're proud, right? They're proud of their cards and they want to show it to, and they let's admit, if you're putting it out on Instagram or social media, you're seeking people to you're seeking external validation. So, this whole like, oh, only uh not loud collectors because people don't say that right now, but these content creators and influencers, they just want clout and just chasing clout. I think we're all chasing something. It's just that some of us are more willing to admit that than others. But when it comes to the quiet collector who's just taking pictures of their collections, i I mean, I'll argue that it's not even really content, especially, and here's the thing. I mean, if you have pictures and you have words and you're creating a narrative and a story, I think that's content. But I think you, the listener, and I know very well that there are some huge accounts that have huge collections and they'll post cards and there's nothing behind the picture. There's no captions, there's no story, there's no context, and it gets like 500 likes, 1,000 likes, because they already have a really baked in, like, huge follower base. But there's no comments, there's no engagement. There's just fire emojis in the comments. Just, fire, 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 fire. You know? I mean, is that even content in this day and age? I mean, maybe in the past it was, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud, like, does that grow the hobby? Just putting up a picture and just being like, "Look at this really expensive card." I don't know. I think that, there's room for everyone, and it's not me casting any criticism or judgment or blame, but I think that there is this strange collector versus non-collector, almost like the Sharks and the Jets and the East and the East Coast, West Coast rap battles, and Do we even need that? Like, I think there's room for all of us. I mean, I like to think so. But yeah, I really went on tangent, didn't I? Just went really down a rabbit hole. All right, let me see. Uh, oh, I mean, I really think that this particular idea or subject about the quiet collector versus the loud collector, because let's face it, the flipper versus collector argument or debate or topic has been, I've consumed a lot of it. But I really think that, again, just putting this general label of collector on this entire base that doesn't transact, that doesn't do a lot of selling and trading, maybe they do a lot of buying. It's not a monolith, and I want to maybe explore that some more. I don't think it's going to be in this episode, but I also wanted to say that people who are quietly entering the hobby, they're also quietly leaving the hobby, and it's not just flippers and investors who are leaving the hobby, but there are some collectors. Again, I don't know what the percentage is and the raw numbers or the percentage numbers, but they came in for nostalgia's sake during the pandemic, and their their social media accounts, they were once active, they used to post, now they've completely stopped. And they used to engage in comment sections, and now they don't log into Instagram anymore. These are the people who follow you, who you follow back, but they're just inactive accounts now, and they're leaving just as quietly as they came in. They're not going to make a big uproar or a big post about why I'm leaving the hobby. They're definitely not creating a YouTube with a shocked face like this, and it's like, this is why I'm leaving the hobby. They're just leaving, and maybe these folks will come back years later. Maybe they'll revisit their toys, their Woodies and Buzz Lightyears with another generation, so that they maybe try to connect the past with the present and the present with the future and all that stuff. But maybe they won't either. So kind of threw a lot out there. I don't know how to end this. I'm usually really I'm not that good at ending episodes. I think still I'm still working. I'm still a work in progress, y'all. I think some people try to judge me on a really tough curve, and I'm like, listen, this podcast didn't exist 5 months ago. It just didn't. And I guess that at some point that excuse is going to go away. But with these bonus episodes, I less less structured, more flexibility, more tangents, more rabbit holes, less. I don't know. I try to do something there, but I couldn't get there. So the question I want to leave behind, and this is my final talking point, is nostalgia enough, right? Because in order for this hobby to not be a casino, it can't just be transaction, spin the wheel, see if you get all sevens, see if you hit the bonus, the jackpot, press the button on the video poker, push the chips in the middle, try to win a pot, see, try to win the tournament, try to see how many hands, how many times you can transact, and just keep pushing, pushing, pushing. I don't know, like maybe, for some people that is enough and that's all they want to do. They don't have PCs, like I said. I think they serve a purpose. Um, but in order for the hobby to not be a casino, I think there has to be some heart behind the transaction, the the card, wanting the card, keeping the card. Um, that's just my opinion. I don't know. Um, but I want to know what all of you think. I Some of you are not at all shy and reaching out to me. Some of you may still be, and that's fine. And if you just want to consume and listen, thank you for the download. Thank you for the listen. But again, I keep saying, so long as you come civilly, respectfully, not even professionally, just cordially, I'm willing to engage and converse with anyone, and some of you definitely know that. So, uh, I will end this by saying, thank you so much, international listeners, etc. Y'all are awesome. I'm hitting some cool milestones on the podcast that I'll probably talk about in another time. But let's not forget the most important conventional wisdom is that, and again, this assumes if the hobby is a casino, but It's that the house always wins. So, thank you for listening to what is this? Episode 46. The hobby is not a casino. Who knows what episode 47 is going to be? Maybe it's back to the hobby is casino. I don't know. Anything's possible, like just like Kevin Garnett said. So, all right.